Hi guys, just want to say first of all, according to my watch I should be saying good morning. It's actually almost 8 o'clock in the morning. Don't be confused by my accent. I'm originally from Israel, but I'm based in New Zealand, so you get a bit of both. I'm the CEO of Horizon State. We recently won the award from the World Economic Forum for Technology Pioneers. We are building a large, which we think is a really important system that connects decentralized environments with large centralized organizations, which is a bit of a conflict because we're talking about two separate worlds that actually needs to collide together and operate together under a single system that we believe. And as we started to deal with research and meeting stakeholders on the ground, we realized that some of the information that we received from academia and some of the information we received from the people on the ground, these community leaders, were absolutely mind-blowing. And it led us to believe that a new form of governance needs to be built and a new form of leadership needs to be designed into a system that we're going to talk about today.
I'll change it.
Sorry. That's right.
Great.
So
Awesome.
we'll start with what I refer to as the digital depression. The large digital depression. We're all connected. I've got more than a dozen applications on my mobile phone that allows to interact every single minute with every single person, so many messages every day, yet we are getting more and more depressed. The level of trust that we've seen in organizations and people is slowly in decline. We're far more connected than we've ever been, yet despite the fact that we consume so much information, still trust is in decline. And what we've realized recently is that, if I think of America, for example, 44% of all Americans consume the news through Facebook, which is unbelievable. Yet 63% of us can actually tell if it's fake news or real news. So despite the fact that we're connected, we're actually finding real challenges in understanding the meaning of that connection and where there's trust embedded in the systems. So we find ourselves in a really interesting situation, as I mentioned. And you can see, based on research recently published about trust, that despite all the recent transparency, and governments these days are far more transparent than we used to. If you look back 20 years ago, we're publishing a lot more information online than we've ever. It's available, it's consumable. So why is trust in constant decline? And I want to ask you some difficult questions today, really difficult questions. And by show of hands, can you tell me, which one of you, hand on heart, can tell me that your vote in your last election was counted? Okay, not one, maybe gut feel? One. It's really difficult actually telling that your voice has been heard, it's been counted, you know it for a fact, and the total amount of votes counted are unanimously agreed on. And that's really a simple issue, is it? But it's not. So we trust the process, we trust the people, we trust the organization, but do we actually have the trust embedded in a system that is designed to enable that level of trust? And probably the answer is no. So we've decided through our research that we needed to do something about it. We needed to enable people to express their opinions in a safe manner. We needed to design a system that will not abuse the trust. You can probably look at it as the smart contract of trust. In a simple way, I'll give you an example. If I go to my GP and get a medical advice, which happens quite often, but what happens to my file? Do I actually know who accessed my file? What if I take this information and I file for claim insurance? Do I really know what this information is being used to buy insurance policy? No, probably not. But what if you could trace it? What if we give you the power to control your own data? What if for once you will not be the product of any company like Facebook? What if you control the data? What if you control the level of trust? What if you published information on your own terms? What if the government would actually ask you once, dear customer, would you like to access, we would like to access information. Would you be kind so to reply with what level of transparency would you require? Because you see, when you fill a census form, you put your name, you put your address, you put your age, how many members in the household, but does it really matter? Because your name from a census point of view, from a statistical point of view, does not really matter. It's actually other things more statistical that are important. So trust by design. The second thing about decentralized leadership that we figured out is important is the emotional connection of the leaders to their communities. We believe this is really the new currency. The emotional connections of developers building systems that allow the community members to interact with the leaders on a level that doesn't exist yet. so that when we vote for a politician, we let them run on our behalf, not just during the election, but post the election. All throughout the 4 years when they represent us every single day, we'll give them that level of ability to interact emotionally with us because they will win their hearts and minds. But you see, this concept of decentralization is not new. We talk about crowdsourcing a lot, but actually this has been in place for quite some time. We've been crowdsourcing ideas on the ground, especially by military forces out there, for the last 20 years. So decentralized leadership existed in very central organizations like military. We've seen this a number of times, when the people on the ground actually make the decisions on behalf of a larger organization because they are emotionally feeling what is out there. They know best how to interpret the situation. So we've realized that with decentralized leadership, we needed to start ensuring that the information that is close to us is managed, it's filtered all the way up, and it's processed at the right level. But it's not easy, because we operate on different levels. So on the right-hand side, we've got central organizations. We have this standard, traditional, top-down, I'm the CEO, I tell everyone what to do, please go ahead and do it. Actually, it's in your job description. It says when to show up, when to leave, what to do, and you get paid based on your level of accountability. But actually, as human beings, we interact very differently. We operate on the left-hand side, decentralized. And if I'm volunteering for an organization, I will do it on my own terms. I will do because I believe, not because I've been told. I will do because I would like to. And no one can tell me how many hours. I might contribute 30 minutes or actually 40 hours a week. And I'm probably, most likely, not going to get paid. It's quite the reverse situation. I might even donate funds to an organization. So if you think of us as people on this side and organizations on that side, well, there's a bit of a dialogue issue, where one is factual and logical and the other one is really emotional and thinking about the here and now. And the system we're trying to build really is that bridge between the two. But it's not always easy. There are many questions that we can't really figure out what's right and what's wrong, especially in the decentralized leadership environment. And I'll give you a few to think about. Oops. I love this one, because you kind of look at it and you can think about 50 different scenarios, but are you really wrong? Is the crowd really right? So if we publish the scientific research to the market for expressions of opinions, for people to tell us what you think, but we're the experts. If someone's told us something, do we consider this a decision, as an opinion? Does it really make us wrong? You see, I look at the right-hand side and I can see two different characters. The first one is the irresponsible leader. The second one is the definition of entrepreneurship. So when we go out and ask, we really need to define what is it that we're asking and on what terms. Another difficult question is, came out quite some time ago by a famous research from Gallup about the concept of management and leadership, and they surveyed over probably 1 million employees across 400 different companies, 80,000 managers, and this led to this revelation of the best leaders, the best managers actually break the rules. Now think about decentralized leadership, when we have so many leaders representing communities and everyone breaking the rules at the same time. What a chaotic situation. But it's not easy, because we want to encourage this innovation, this creativity, but how do we actually manage it? And the third one I would add is, should we really ask? Some of the most famous leaders out there are encouraging us not to ask the crowd, because what do we know? We're just consumers. But yet we know we're here for a reason. We know because asking sometimes makes us think twice about what we do. Now they say that even throughout our crowdfunding process last year, we got stuck. 24 hours before the end of the crowdfunding, we got stuck. And we did the unthinkable. We actually reached out to the public, to our community, and we asked the stupid question, what should we be doing? And we've learned incredibly in a few minutes about opinions of people that actually matters to us. And within the last 24 hours, we've managed to raise the amount of money that was equivalent to the last 2 weeks, just by learning. But yet it's not always easy to ask that question. So we think that there's a new concept that is missing. We've learned that when you ask the question, especially in the centralized leadership concept, you need to really define your package, the boundaries of the engagement, and the definition of your request. We call this packaging. In the blockchain environment, in the centralized environment, consensus is really important. Verification is really important. Transparency is incredibly important. But when we do that as human beings, it's not always easy. We've realized that sometimes we should ask, or sometimes we shouldn't ask. One of the most complicated scenarios I've seen in governments was when we met a minister at the World Economic Forum event in Tianjin, China. And a certain minister admitted publicly that they've really wanted the public to engage. So they've shared the policy with the public. And they've made a huge mistake, well, according to them. 500,000 people responded with Twitter messages, with Facebook messages, with letters sent by post, with emails, emotional emails, long emails, short emails, very vocal responses. How do you process so much information to make a constructive decision on a single platform? That wasn't easy. That certainly wasn't easy. So we needed to find a way to package that so that every leader within the centralized environment understand the boundaries of their engagement. But not all decentralized environments are the same. And I think there's two major factors we need to consider. One is trust, and the second one is compliance. If you're operating in a high trust, high compliance environment, we require a level of transparency, which is different to a level of visibility. There's probably less required in environments where you do not require a level of compliance. But trust is really important. So I would like to offer a model to consider. Moving from the top-down approach, directing downwards, or government engaging the public, towards a more collaborative style of engagement for decentralized leadership. And you can probably look at these grayish boxes and think of them as communities. You can think of them as cities. Each one might have a different sense of identity. Each one will have a different sense of brand. Each one within the leader of an organization will have a different sense of meaning. But each one of them needs to organize and package their definition within a single engagement style. So transparency is important when you report up, and there's a misconception about decentralization that has no governance. Governance is required, especially in the environment that we operate today, but it's the level of governance that matters. So we offer transparency, but only to one side. We offer visibility to the other side. And in terms of operational capability as well, we need to really measure what are we asking the decentralized leaders to perform. So there's a few examples that I would like to share with you in terms of responsibilities that I think are important. And I'm not going to read it out loud, I'm probably going to share the presentation later. But for me, I would suggest keep the trust in mind. Governance is really, really important, especially in decentralized leadership. When you have so many of us, so many leaders engaging, we need to set ground rules for engagement. And I believe that this protocol of engagement, especially these days, is missing. We talk about crowdsourcing, but we haven't talked about how we're going to work together to achieve that. It's not just about a funding mechanism, which is one way. How do we share? How do we contribute back? And that's kind of the problems that Horizon State has set to solve, when there's no easy answers these days. And I would like to leave you with 3 messages to conclude. 3 things that I would like you to go away and think about. Those are the most important ones that I've learned in the last probably year. The first one is transparency is not enough. If you think of a standard private company that doesn't share information because they're not required, that's one kind of extreme end. And you think about a publicly listed company that sends reports every quarter and lets the whole world know about the ins and the outs. That's a second, probably put it in the middle. But now we operate today in certain environments where we need to report daily to our public, to our communities, to our stakeholders, daily. And sometimes even daily is not enough. The second one that I would add is that emotional code is probably more bug tolerant. For those software developers out there, I would suggest that especially focus on the emotional connection that you create with your users. You give them features, but think about why and how they benefit them, not necessarily. They will forgive you for all the bugs, but if you actually solve a meaningful problem for them. And the problem we're trying to solve is allowing you to express your opinion in a safe manner without disclosing your identity. So that next time you go and vote, we won't know who you are, but we'll know that you're eligible to vote. And we will guarantee that you can count your vote and it will be counted. And thirdly, I would add, is that you need to define the package. If you're operating in a decentralized environment, know your boundaries, know what level of reporting is required, know your community, engage, but understand the rules of engagement in a decentralized environment. Thank you, guys.
Great. Awesome. Thank you, Oren.
Pleasure.
This is really amazing presentation, and I really wish that many more people will be able to see this. But you're going to be also tomorrow as well, and you're also going to have an interactive session
Absolutely.
later on
I look forward to seeing you
at the
guys.
Plastic Room. Any question for Oren? Anyone? Please, the microphone. Anyone has a microphone? Okay. Can you get a microphone? Yeah, you can bring it here. Right here.
This one.
It's not working. How come? Nothing is working. Everything worked 1 hour ago. Okay, great. So, do you want to give to this lady? Here we go. Great.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for an amazing presentation, Oren. I second Becky's sentiments on that one for sure. I was wondering if you had any more, how you think you're going to approach the communication side of it and engagement of communities, because that is the piece that I see as the hardest challenge.
You're absolutely right. It is the hardest challenge. We've asked ourselves many times, should we build a system that allows us to take selfies with cups of coffee and post it on, and we decided not. We decided to build a system that allows a constructive set of feedback, that allows me as an individual to express my opinion. The type of communication is critical. It has to be constructive. We're really trying to encourage by design you, me, us, to engage on our own terms. And we believe that the best style of engagement is when it's done on my own terms. And you see, I've asked myself a number of times, even on a personal level, why have I decided not to vote in the last 20 years? Despite the fact I was living across 3 different countries. And I thought initially, maybe I just give up. What's the point? Nothing will change. But it's far beyond that. It's not just a vote, it's a disengagement. It's a disengagement because I'm not part of it, because I'm a passive. I'm just riding the journey. But what if I could participate? What if I knew that my voice was actually heard? Maybe not be counted in a way, but at least I had a chance to look at it. And we're now facing situations where communities all over the world are trying to engage the UNDP for assistance, and they file applications, and they have no idea when these applications will ever be even received, if ever, even looked after. So we're building a system that allows communication on a human level, but at the same time, a different type of engagement, a really strong bond between people, communities, and the leaders. We believe that the community leaders play an incredible role in winning the hearts and minds of the community. Hence why we're focusing on the concept of decentralized leadership. That is the only way for us to connect so many of us into a central organization. That's why we believe that agile governance needs to be implemented progressively, but also very carefully. I believe there was another question.
Yeah, one more question. Rob.
Hi, Oren. Great
Hi.
presentation. Could you give an example of a use case you solved for?
I'll give a couple. We are at the moment launching our voting platform in the next couple of weeks. We've got a large customer in India who will be using the platform to ask the public for expressions of opinions, as in, it's actually a political party, funnily enough. So people will use the platform to tell the leaders of the party what they think they should focus on, not just pre-election, but all throughout the term, which is unheard of. When was the last time you communicated directly with those that you voted for and told them what you thought in a constructive manner, not on Facebook? It doesn't happen that often. The second use case that I will add is that we have an interesting engagement with a football club who was looking to possibly trial our system. A football club. Decentralized football club with global members all over the world. We're really solving an engagement issue. The third one that I would add is that we're also having a dialogue with some governments about the citizen-level relationship with the government, so that when you vote, when you run your census, not every 4 years, but every Wednesday on your own terms, with disclosure of data, you do it and you know that the information was actually looked after at the same time. So it's really a horizontal play. There's some vertical solutions like voting and census and a few others that we're working on, but it will be a long-term engagement. And we're hopefully, I guess our aim on a personal level is to bring communities together. And by doing so, we can start connecting them better to these authorities.
Great. Oren, thank you very much. This was
Pleasure.
really, really informational. And we're going to ask more questions to Oren. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great work.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.